Listen, fellas, we could get all caught up on theatrics of whether or not I lied or told the truth, what even is a lie. I don't want to get bogged down with that. To be quite frank, it doesn't even matter. What matters right now is the real reason why you're here. You want to know, is Destiny 2 actually saved? And is Renegades the expansion to save it? Guys, there is a lot. I mean, borderline NDA breaking shit that I'm about to share with you that is probably not going to pass the sniff test from Bungie. I'm just going to be clear. This will probably not pass. Well, about 15 minutes of this video just got cut. For good reason. NDAs exist. And I have a tendency to spill the beans at times. And again, we have to get approval for all these. So it's not like I could sneak something in. With that being said, though, we are going to talk about Renegades. But I just want you to know that there's hope. That's what I want you to know from this. Now, what falls into the umbrella of hope? Use your imagination. I want you to think about to yourself, what would give you hope in Destiny? And then I want you to go to the top of that umbrella and choose the thing that would give you the most hope. So just ponder upon that. As we talk about Renegades, ponder on hope. So I know this intro is very long-winded. Most of you are probably here because you just want to see what the hell Renegades is bringing to the table. Let me just say, guys, this is the first time Bungie's ever done something like this. Not only is this just a collaboration, it is an entire expansion themed in that collaboration. So for this case, it's a Star Wars inspired expansion. Now, this is one of two. So as you know, instead of us getting one big annual expansion in a single year, we now get two. And let me just say right out the gate, Renegades felt, just in my few days of playing it, felt way more dense than what Edge of Fate was. And we're going to get into, you know, it's essentially the factions, the replayability, the gameplay loop, some of the gear, although we're going to have dedicated videos on gear, all the exotics, all the weapons, all that jazz. But I also want to set the stage, which I think is the strongest point to this expansion. And that's actually the story. Allison has done a very, very good job. And despite what Edge of Fate may have been in terms of its final reviews, we can all agree that the story for it was pretty solid. And I would argue and say Renegades exceeds that on every level. Now, I'm going to walk you through kind of what's happening here with Renegades, the new destination, which is called Lawless Frontier. It is a little bit different than what we experience in Edge of Fate and other expansions, as there isn't necessarily one big destination you can explore, but rather there are 3 destinations. You heard that right. 3. That being Mars, Venus, and Europa, which contains the main activities for Renegades. Then you also have Tharsis Outpost, which is essentially the hub area where you're going to be able to talk with NPCs, vendors, as well as different factions, aka syndicates, that Renegades offers. This area, by the way, Tharsis Outpost, is truly Star Wars inspired and actually really cool. You've got your different factions, your different syndicates. You've got Vex with clothes on. And yeah, you're kind of just bumping around in this cantina, if you will. And yeah, it's got a lot of character. I like that about it. And I think for a long time, social areas, which either A, did not exist inside of Destiny, or B, if they did exist, they were weak as hell. Look no further than the farm we built for the Elixning, if you even call that a social post. Tharsis Outpost was designed much, much better than that. Now, at this outpost, you will have your 3 syndicate faction dens, which you're going to unlock and access as you progress through the Renegades campaign. More on that shortly, though. Now, this takes us to the activity itself. Again, I would argue and say Edge of Fate didn't really have a proper activity. This one, though, has an activity called Lawless Frontiers. Now, you've already probably seen gameplay of this already, but this is essentially Bungie's take on Helldivers. You go in, you complete objectives, you use Renegade abilities, and then at the end, you'll need to exfil successfully. Now, I really like the setup at the beginning of this area because before you even launch into the activity, you like load into this intro area, you see your ship, and you actually choose your Renegade abilities that you're going to take in with you. Now, let me just say, guys, these Renegade abilities, they are not like the, I guess, Matter Spark, optional abilities that you saw from Edge of Fate. These abilities are definitely worth using. They are extremely potent. And the other side of things is that they're very, very fun to use. Now, you can only select up to 2. But let me just go over some of the abilities, though, that you can choose. You've got Strafing Run, which calls down an airstrike from your ship that damages and scorches hostiles and objects in the target area. You've got Revitalize, which calls in a utility shank that heals and provides ability energy for allied guardians. Recon Shank, which calls in a reconnaissance shank that can pinpoint the location of hostiles, high-value targets, and objects of interest, that being things like chests. Imperium Drop Pod, which calls down a modified Imperium Drop Pod that slams into the ground, damaging combatants on impact. The pod also contains weapon ammo. It's actually a fantastic way to top off your ammo. Do keep in mind, though, guys, you can literally kill yourself with this. I actually called in a pod on myself and killed myself. I'm not sure if I even have footage of that, but it happens. Then there's the Imperium Behemoth. This is arguably the strongest of the Renegade abilities. It calls in this pilotable Imperium Behemoth war machine at the beacon's location. And this is essentially an ATST from Star Wars, and it controls very similar to that of a brig, but it's faster and bigger. Now, guys, I was using this thing on my invasions, and yes, there are invasions. And let me just say, man, it is hell to take one of these things down. I actually had people using their super on me and they couldn't take me down while I was inside of this thing. It has so many different attacks. It moves very good and it tanks a ton of damage. Then we have our Piker Mortar. It calls in a Piker Mortar that launches homing missiles at targets in the area. You've got a Falcon, which calls in a Falcon attack that provides both mobility and offensive support in the field. Vex Deflector, which calls in a defensive Vex Deflector dome that absorbs and reflects incoming fire. Targets who pass through the dome are damaged and jolted. I actually use this one a lot, guys. The dome is huge. Like, it is so good. And I would argue and say, if you are looking for something to actually defend against invaders, I think nothing works better than the dome. Then we have the Vex Stun Field. This creates a Vex derived field that stuns targets within the radius of attack. Now, Bungie is also allowing for these vehicles like the Falcon and the Behemoth to be customized further. The base Falcon says that it has incredible top speed and a heavy mounted heat weapon, which can be fired while in motion. The Falcon can cause high collision damage when traveling at high speeds. There's also a strand version where dodging launches a large strand projectile that can tie up Imperium Behemoths. And then there's a stasis version, which is outfitted with experimental stasis weaponry that can freeze targets. It has unlimited boost to allow you to smash through any frozen targets, and it can spawn its own stasis crystals using its secondary fire. I really like this, guys, because it doesn't just end with unlocking some of these unlocks. As it goes further than that, you have deeper customization just beyond that. And I don't know what I was really expecting from this, but it came out much better than what I originally thought. I guess my expectations were low. I was expecting it to be like very bare bone. I was also expecting like at any point Bungie's gonna be like, hey, you want to turn into a ball? Luckily, that didn't happen. And these are actually abilities that I would relate them to on the levels like a Helldiver ability. Now, when starting out, you'll only have access to Revitalize and Strafing Run, but you'll unlock more as you progress. And these abilities can also be upgraded from Spider or from the Quartermasters in each Syndicate den, which seems to go up to level 7. So again, emphasis on joining those Syndicates, pledging to them. And let me just say, this is not really a spoiler, but lots of backstabbing. Now, there's a few mechanics to be aware when it comes to this activity. First off, there's 3 different types of this activity. You have hunts, where you'll need to hunt a notorious outlaw and secure their bounty. There's smuggle, where you'll need to smuggle contraband from the activity. And then there's also sabotage, where you'll need to sabotage hostile assets. Now, all 3 versions of the activity play relatively the same, with maybe just some minor objective changes throughout. Secondly, it's kind of similar to the Nether from Heresy, as health recovery is disabled, and instead you do have significantly greater health and shields. There's also destructibles that you can break, which can provide credits and may occasionally drop healing orbs, along with ammo or even revive tokens. Now, throughout the activity, you're going to have various objectives to complete as you move through different areas. But this differs from the Nether, as you aren't necessarily earning enough points to progress. There aren't these long traversal sections, and overall, the activity isn't anywhere as long as, say, something like the Nether. At least, not this version. Again, we're playing the early version of this. I don't know how things are going to evolve over the weeks to come. Instead, though, you usually have one objective per area, with sometimes a bonus objective popping up as well, but it is way more ad dense. So unlike the Nether, which wasn't as ad dense, you have like downtime in between encounters. This one is like go, go, go. I mean, they're really trying to drive the horde mode aspects of this game mode. Now, let me just give you some of the examples of the objectives in these game modes. There's one objective where you need to pick up and carry these cargo crates and then deposit them. And then while carrying the cargo crates, you can still use your weapons, but your movement is slowed. There's also another where killing enemies would drop cargo in the form of these exotic looking ingrams, which you'll need to grab and then deposit. There's also some variations of this where these deposit zones would become shielded and would need to shoot the generators above them to remove the shield. There was also another variation where you had to place this drill, defeat enemies to get conductive charge, which could be used to charge the drill, which would then spawn the cargo to be deposited. Now listen, I can go on and on about the different objectives. What I will say is that it's fun. Like, they're actually good, and you want to lean into those renegade abilities. There were times where I was like, you know what? Screw everything I'm dealing with. I'm dropping in a behemoth. I'm about to start blasting. I think the ad density is also really good, and I would say you could probably relate this activity more so to like Onslaught, right? With that ad density. Not as stationary, as you are still moving around more than like, hey, defend this ADU. But I will say the ad density is up there with Onslaught. Now, I think Bungie did a really good job with balancing these renegade abilities, considering just how strong they are. They have limited charges, some of them having just one charge and others having multiple charge. Now, throughout the activity, you will find these chests that you can interact with, which can refill one spent charge of your equipped renegade's ability. Now, towards the end of the activity, after completing all of your objectives, you'll need to call in your exfil and then essentially defend the point until the Hawk arrives, which you can board the ship, and the first person to do so can actually fire the Hawk's autocannons. Now, there's actually a few different exfil scenarios that I encountered. Sometimes it was just waiting the time until it arrived and defending the zone. Other times it was capturing the zone, which would load cargo onto the ship before it was allowed to exfil. Another was where I had to kill a boss first, then head to the exfil, and then defeat retaliators before I could leave. Think of this as like Extraction Light, right? Like your little intro into what you're going to be experiencing later on, potentially in Marathon. Now, there was also another variation that I saw, which takes place in contested territory and says to complete priority contracts in this contested area to fortify it for your ally syndicate in the future. Now, this takes us to the activity that I had the most fun with. Invasion. You see, Invasion is like the new Gambit mode, if you will. To be able to launch this activity, you need death marks, which is a currency that you can earn from jobs with Invasion enabled. Thankfully, for those out there that don't want to engage with PvP at all, Invasion is not a requirement, but this is likely where you're going to get the best rewards. And at least from looking at the customization screen for Lawless Frontier, Master, and Grandmaster match made were set as invadable, whereas Expert was not. Now, when you do invade, you do have the chance to equip your Renegade abilities before heading through the invasion portal. And when you go in, you're going to have roughly 6 minutes to complete your objective. The only thing you have to worry about when invading is defeating opposing guardians and collecting their crests. So you'll see these 6 boxes on your screen that will fill up with each kill/crest that you collect. So ideally, you really only need like 3 kills and 3 crests. However, you are limited to 6 minutes, and you're also limited to 4 revives. But let me just be clear, guys. If you're rocking the behemoth, you'll get those kills no problem. Matter of fact, I'm really curious to know how invasion is going to look over the long haul, because there were many times that I invaded. I brought my behemoth, and man, I just cleaned house. And you actually end up in a situation where the invasions go very quickly because of how quickly you wipe the other team. And one of the things I actually brought up to Bungie was, hey, could you guys make it require more crests, maybe even more kills, maybe require 6 kills instead of just 3 kills and 3 crests? Again, we'll see how this shakes out for everybody else. I felt like it was really not that hard. considering the Renegade abilities. I think what's going to be interesting to see over the long haul is how people counter each other out with Renegade abilities. Like, you may be in a situation where you're like, all right, he's got a behemoth. I'm going to drop my dome. I'm going to spawn my behemoth. Or maybe you drop your dome and then that guy in the behemoth pushes your dome, but then you drop a Cabal pod on his behemoth. And yes, you could do that. It requires some levels of logistic, but you could definitely pull that off. Now this takes us to why you're doing all of this. And that's actually because of the Syndicates. These factions are split into three. You've got your Pikers, your Totality Division, and your Tharsis Reformation. Now you can choose one syndicate at a time to be allied with, which you can change by interacting with these banners and their specific sections of the Cantina. Now through these factions, you'll meet each head. For example, I spent some time working on ranking up the Totality Division, where the head of the faction is Enforcer Rao, or Ro, one of those. Now, there's a vendor for each faction known as the Quartermaster, which for Totality Division was Armorer Agol. Here, there was a reputation track showing for the rank 2 reward that you can purchase the modified B7 pistol and a Praxic Blade crystal through this faction. It also said that the Totality Division would share their access codes, allowing access to some locked areas in the Lawless Frontier. There's also a shader at rank 5 that you can acquire, and toward the bottom, there was also Totality shipments that you can earn. I hovered over each one of these, which was a small Totality shipment, which you can earn once a week by completing priority contracts. Now, you rank up these factions by contributing dark matter ingots to their war chests and by completing jobs for the Syndicates. Now, when you're on the Lawless Frontier screen, you can actually access your contracts and wallets on the left-hand side of the HUD. Contracts are essentially bounties for Renegades. An example of one right here is for Totality Division. It says to complete and refill from bounty hunt or sabotage jobs, and you need to complete 2 of these. The rewards for completing these type of bounties include 4 dark matter ingots, 200 credits, and 160 faction reputation. There's also priority contracts. This one right here is for Totality Division, and it says to complete jobs in exfil from jobs in Piker or Tharsis Reformation territory, and you'll need to complete 2 jobs. Now, the rewards for completing these include 10 dark matter ingots, 1,000 credits, and 320 faction reputation. So again, these priority contracts are definitely worth doing. Now, there's one more type of contract, and that is invasion contracts. This one right here is a daily invasion contract, which says as an invader, score points by defeating opposing guardians and collecting their crests. Invasion points obtained 0 out of 7. Now, the rewards for this one includes Lawless Frontier gear, which said it was going to be between tiers 3 and 4. 3 death marks, allowing you to do more invasions, along with 10 dark matter ingots. Now, the other section of the screen is going to be for your wallet, showing various currencies that you own. You got your credits, salvage, which can be exchanged for weapons and armor in Tharsis Bazaar. Then there's also sections for key cards obtained from the factions, as well as your invasion death marks. Overall, guys, I really liked this gameplay loop, and I also really liked invasions. I was concerned, considering how Gambit has gone over the years, that people would hate this. But I think that because the emphasis is on Renegade abilities, even though, yes, you can go in with your subclass, you go in with your super hell, you can pop your Goldie and just go in and clean house. But these Renegade abilities really mix things up. And coming from Edge of Fate, where those abilities really fell flat for me, these abilities are so much fun that you're going to want to use them outside of these activities. And I wish we could. Like, no lie, I would drop a behemoth in the middle of a raid. The fact that the abilities are this fun to use in comparison to Edge of Fate, which, I'll be honest with you, I don't think anyone would actually voluntarily use Matter Spark. You know, some of you really like the ball play. These are for real good abilities, man. I mean, they are good enough to just be standalone things. And I really like that Bungie is like interwoven, you know, the tutorials on using these different abilities, these different Renegade abilities within the campaign itself. They're not just dropping you in and overwhelming you. There's a good build-up process that happens here throughout the campaign missions that's also giving you little bits of story here and there, and then throws you into the activity with what you learn from the campaign. And what's even better than that is that while you're in these different activities, invasions, and whatever else, you're also getting pieces of the story thrown back to you. And a lot of it is just like in dialogue. But it actually will change things up as you go on, because you'll notice that no one really can be trusted. Everybody's kind of backstabbing everybody, and Spider hates to lose money. like hates it. It's the worst thing that can happen. So I love that that's his motivation. And yeah, you have an opportunity there to help him out if you want. Now listen, I know some of you just want to know about the weapons and the armor, and I'm going to briefly talk about these things, but I will say we're going to have deeper dives on every single one of them. What I can tell you right out the gate is, number one, the lightsaber, aka the Praxic blade, is phenomenal. I cannot express just how fun it was using this thing. It is so good, and I think it's going to be especially good for hunters with the new exotic. I also think that it is arguably the best on Titan with strongholds, as you can essentially just sit there and block forever and ever. It has so many customizable aspects to the weapon. More customization is present on this sword than any other craftable exotic we have ever been given. And unfortunately, a lot of that I can't even go into detail about, because yes, it does drop from the exotic mission and we can't show any of that. So yeah, we got to play it, but we were not able to show it. But the sword itself, the Praxic blade, very, very good, guys. You're going to like it a lot. As far as the other exotics go, I was a big fan of all three. I will say the Titan exotic is more for maneuverability. And again, we're gonna jump into the deep dives on that in our review. But the maneuverability for it is really the thing that takes the cake. A lot of people are making comparisons to this in Twilight Garrison. Twilight Garrison, you had those dodges, right? You can, when it first came out, you had the double dodge. So you can double dodge, you can use it to help you in your skating. It's very, very good for maintaining momentum and building up momentum. But again, they eventually nerfed that. And when they nerfed that, you can only have the one dodge. I would say this exotic, although people are going to figure out ways to like help with things like skating or building up momentum, the main takeaway for it is you can literally just fly. Like, it's an exotic that allows you to fly. If you're doing a jump puzzle, I would say there is no better exotic to use than that exotic, especially if you're just terrible at jump puzzles. So for me, it's a godsend. For the Hunter exotic, I think it's low-key going to be an S-tier exotic. I think it's so good for survivability. The free damage buff that it gives is very, very good. And for the Warlock exotic, I think there's a lot of play with it because it works with every strand ability. And with the changes there to rifts, you're going to be using this exotic for strand synergies, for the damage over time, and anything that is suspend based, because that suspend from any source, at least from my testing, procs that damage over time and also procs that healing. As far as the other weapons, there's just so many, man. The heat weapons, I will say, feel phenomenal. I played with the hand cannon that's got the scope on it and was doing some invasions with it. It hits very, very hard, and I think you guys are going to like it a lot. Heat weapons across the board, I think, are very, very solid. And we're actually going to be doing reviews for some of these individually. Because yes, you probably see some of the gameplay here in front of you. This is essentially a legendary sweet business. It's phenomenal. I was proccing bolt charge stacks like mad. And yes, we will probably be individually reviewing this one as the days go on. Guys, we have a number of videos lined up over probably the next few hours into the next few days. That's going to be showcasing, a lot of what Renegades has to offer. I'm going to continue to avoid story spoilers simply because I don't want much of the story spoiled for myself. Again, I will say, based on what I experience in the story, I think that is probably the strongest aspect to Renegades. Now, this also circles back to what people are hoping from Renegades, which is to address all of the core issues within Destiny. Loot being a big one, old content not being added to the portal, vault issues, vault constraints. I would say the vault constraint thing, that's actually been taken care of, and we actually got to take a look at it. And it's very, very nice, guys. You will have the ability to pretty much utilize your in-game vaults. Maybe not as good as Destiny Item Manager, but for console players, this is very nice. The ability to filter through all these different options, to have the individual pages that you can choose in between. I actually found myself, even after just a few minutes with it, like I was like, okay, I can see myself, if I didn't want to pull up dim right there in the spot, legitimately utilizing this vault feature as my feature going forward when it comes to pulling gear and putting gear up. The other side of things is the increase in space. The plus 300 there in space is very, very helpful. Granted, we're going to blow through that. I mean, look at all the new weapons that you have here. This thumbnail right here, which shows all the weapons that we're going to be getting in Renegades. You're going to be getting multiple rolls of this, and that's not even including all the different armor pieces that you're going to be getting. So this is still a band-aid fix for me, the plus 300 to revolt. I don't know how long it's going to take for me to fill this up, probably fairly quickly, but eventually Bungie's going to have to figure out something here, maybe in the way we are able to stack our loot. You know, maybe they extend weapon crafting to armor crafting or something like that, because right now our vaults are becoming very bloated with a lot of different armor pieces and a lot of different weapons. As far as the core problems go and the issues with the portal itself, I mean, Bungie's doing some consolidation across the board, but they are still investing into the portal, most notably with the new 6-man activity portal playlist. Yes, there's actually an activity playlist that is completely devoted to 6-man activities. And I think this is when I get a bit excited about it, because when you think about things like Menagerie, Bungie's not going to bring back the entirety of Menagerie the way that we experienced it back in the day and drop it in on us, because, well, quite frankly, the loot that dropped from that version of Menagerie wouldn't make sense. It would need an overhaul. But also the enemies themselves would need an overhaul. Like, we are very, very strong now. And I mean, you've seen the different blog posts that have gone out over the past week. We would blow through something like Menagerie, especially with the 6-man fire team. With that being said, though, I could see a portal version of the Menagerie existing. And I think what you're going to see is that the portal will become what we always wanted it to be, which was a way to cycle in old content, old fan favorites, whether that be raid layers, whether that be old 6-man activities, whether that be like a sundial or a Menagerie, and it actually be things that we're excited to see, rather than it being, hey, we're taking away things that exist in the game currently and forcing them into the portal. There's got to be a better system in which the destination tab and the portal will work harmoniously together. And I actually think they're approaching that. Will we nail that in Renegades? I'm not sure. We'll have to see, guys. I hope they will, though, because I think that those two roads need to exist together. It can't just be portal or nothing else. Those two things have to go hand in hand. And yes, there is, even though everybody wants to throw the portal out, there is value there in the portal. As far as the loot goes, tiered loot, we've talked about this a lot. Man, I think everybody's just going to be getting tier 5s day one. And this is where we didn't really talk about this at Bungie, because everybody's focused on the new content and some other external things. But as far as tiered loot goes, I'm pretty sure people are going to be able to earn tier 5s very, very quickly. And I don't know the solution forward on that. Some of you are going to be like, hell yeah, give me my tier 5s. But I know there is a portion of the Destiny community that's saying, hey, listen, where is the aspirational grind? Where is the aspirational loot? Where's the, I gotta go flawless to get that item. I've got to beat that GM Nightfall to get that adept. I'm not really sure how Renegades is going to address that. I'm actually hoping that, again, I'm recording this video the day before the Vidoc goes live. I'm hoping the Vidoc may actually shed some light on this, or even the TWAB this coming week also shed some light on that. These are core issues that I don't know if Renegades is going to be able to address. Granted, a lot of what this video is just how Renegade stands on its own two legs. And I think it's a strong expansion, guys. Substantially stronger than Edge of Fate, by the way. Like, when I say a strong expansion, it's way better than Edge of Fate in a multitude of ways. But is it on the level of like Forsaken or Witch Queen? That's something we just won't know until we get in there. This is a Star Wars inspired Destiny expansion, but it is truly a Destiny expansion still. I've been extremely impressed from the delivery, from the narrative team, from the cast of voice actors to the music. Hell, we got Michael Salvatore back in the studio again. This is looking to be quite the experience for all of us. Will this address those core problems? Only time will tell. And that's something that Bungie is going to have to talk to us about sooner rather than later. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, we'll have lineups for all the different reviews coming out for the exotics and the armor pieces for those that want more depth. As far as what I think about Renegades, again, these were my thoughts, man. I enjoyed it. I thought the narrative was very, very strong. I liked, the different activities. I liked invasions, surprisingly. I wouldn't say it's the Gambit replacement, because I actually think Gambit could really use an entire overhaul or rework. Hell, potentially even the Gambit mode from Destiny Rising just being thrown in. And you saw that from the polls that Bungie sent out. Bungie actually sent out polls asking people about Gambit. But this invasion stuff, like, this is not This is not Gambit 2.0. It's its own standalone thing. And you could sell by just the Renegade abilities. So, guys, hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for watching. And I'll catch you in the next one. Bye, everybody.
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.